right, keep going. First gear. Start it.
Having the drive of his life, an enthusiastic Russell Brookes is really challenging the top men for the lead. But he suffers a temporary hitch at this one.
Pressure's off, Russell. How do you feel?
Absolutely great. Fabulous. Fabulous. It's my first international win ever.
When you rolled it on the very first day, did you ever feel you'd be in the lead at this stage, the last stage of the rally?
No, never, but it's proof that you should never give up trying, isn't it? I've done fabulously well. You know, it's an escort to finish the Scottish and the punishment that I gave it as well. Superb.
Talbot hopes in the British Championship are being kept alive by Russell Brookes. The Worcestershire driver has never won the Welsh Rally, but is gradually working his way up the leaderboard.
As for Brookes and McRae, the intervention of team orders put a temporary halt to their rivalry. Russell Brookes, co-driven by Mike Broad, takes the 1985. Once again, man to power. Russell Brookes and co-driver Mike Broad, who are the 1985 Shell Oil's RAC Open Rally champions.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Rally Me Group B's tribute to Russell Brookes. This is a follow-up now from our race retro meeting in all the way back in February, and we've had such a difficult time since February with all the COVID and everything else that's gone on, and everybody's lives changed dramatically from different things and different happening. And we did plan this meeting or a follow-up from the tribute from race retro. Way before this, but with everything that was going on, it's taken till this time to sort of get it up. So we've got some amazing people on tonight, a massive contingency from Ireland as well, which is good to see. I haven't seen one of them drinking Guinness yet, which I'm very disappointed in, but I'm sure later on that'll happen. We've got British champions on here. We've got sons of British champions. We've also got people like Mike West, who's going to help me presenting the show tonight. We've got Gary Dunn from Silverstone Auctions, and hopefully there's a lot to talk about tonight. So I'll get straight into introducing people. So firstly, can we introduce Rob Brookes, the son of Russell Brookes? We're very, very grateful, Rob, that you've come on this evening. Thank you very much. Just say a few words and say hello to everybody.
Good evening, Tim, and thank you so much for inviting me along. It's a real honour and a bit of a privilege to be here. So thank you very much.
I'm glad to see that, unlike me, as you're quite familiar with Zoom meetings, so that makes life a lot easier. But we've got Jack in the background as well, and Mark controlling the technical side of it this evening, and sort of almost producers, if we want to call them. So just people in the background there that are doing a great job. So I'll just like to thank them before we get into it. So Mike Broad, my old friend Mike Broad. Me and Mike met many years ago, to be honest with you, in all sorts of various different guises. We've kept in touch ever since. And Mike's been a great supporter of the group and helped things. Mike, welcome on board tonight. Jack, can you unmute Mike? Oh. Jack, are you there? Jack's gone for his shower. Can you unmute Mike, please?
Mike will have to do that.
Oh, there you go. Sorry, Mike. We didn't get any of that. Oh, he's muted again.
Gosh, how about that?
That's better. There we go.
Well, we'll hope that works this time. I thought I knew what I was doing with Zoom, but perhaps not. Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to be here. It's a sad occasion every time I talk about Russell because I still can't get over he's not here. But yeah, chuffed a bit, and it's great to see Rob as well, and the contingency from Southern Ireland. I mean, gosh.
Indeed. Michael West, co-presenter this evening. I say co-promoter, co-presenter this evening. Michael, introduce yourself.
Well, what is it that I can say? I'm going to be coming out with a few bits of information about Russell's cars, the cars that we had on the display, things that obviously Rob will already know about and Michael already know about. So forgive me if I get things slightly wrong. I'll do my best. And that's my job for tonight.
I'm sure you'll be okay. I'm sure you'll fettle it very well, as they say. Gary Dunn. Gary's involved with Silverstone Auctions, and if you remember, some time ago we had we produced a show that was about the sale of the T16. But Gary's going to come on and tell us a little about how we value classic rally cars and things of these days, and how that works, and how things are going in the industry, and how the values are creeping up slightly. Just say hello, Gary.
Evening all. Privileged to be here. It seems probably somewhere approaching 3 years ago that myself and John first met. So I know it was really subsequent to the Peugeot sale back in May that John got back in touch and said maybe it's time to do something. So I know it's been something that he's taken quite a while thinking about doing. So we're kind of privileged to be involved.
Brilliant. Thank you, Gary. And John Leahy, long-term member of Rallying with Group B, and the owner of an amazing car, to be honest, the Andrews Sunbeam, Lotus Sunbeam. We could have invited, I think, to be honest, there's lots of reasons, but we could have invited lots of owners from the display on tonight. But the intention was just to do an hour-long program, just to do it justice with Russell and to follow up from the show. John's been invited because unfortunately John didn't get the opportunity to display his vehicle at Race Retro, albeit we tried very, very hard to make that happen, and it was sadly missed at the show, but no fault of John's at all. So it was completely commercial, but I thought it'd be fitting for John to come on tonight and chat about his Sunbeam a little bit. Good evening, John.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Good to be here, and let's have a good show.
Thank you. You're still very wobbly, John. I don't know whether you want to try a different connection or something. You were still struggling to hear you there. We hardly got a word of that. But
did you hear me? Yeah.
A little bit, yeah, but you're a little bit broken up and a little bit crackly. So if you can just see about, or maybe even log in again if you can, or something that might help. But so we'll come back to you. We're not going to chat with you for a little while yet, so I'll let you know.
Right. Okay.
And we'll leave. We'll just say quick hello to the Irish contingency, John Leahy, James O'Brien. We've obviously got Anthony Neston and the infamous Owen Murphy. Who's campaigned John's Sunbeam in the most recent years when Russell wasn't driving it. I think you were. So what better person to have on about that? So good evening. Okay, Mike, shall we move on a little bit? I hope I haven't missed anybody there because my screen's gone all funny and I don't know whether we've got the full continuity on my screen or not, but if not, we'll get to you a little bit later on. Michael. Race Retro.
What can I say about Race Retro? I mean, that picture there shows the stand and the collection of cars that we had, and it was amazing, and it was an absolute honor to be able to arrange those on that stand. It was a stunning sight, and a credit to you and Jack for bringing those cars together, for getting people to bring them. To get those.
it wasn't a difficult thing to do. I mean, it seems like a massive task, but to be perfectly honest with you, Russell was so friendly with everybody. He was so well known with everybody, and even the owners of the cars that he used to campaign, you know, they were so well connected that I only had to mention the word Russell Brookes and tribute, and they bent over backwards. So it was very fitting, and it was very, you know, it was very honourable as well, and it was a pleasure really to speak to these people, and I think Russell would have been very proud of the fact that they were very keen to come and display the cars. So yeah, it was quite a reasonably easy task to get that together, albeit it looked like it was a monstrous task. And I don't want to take anything away from me or Jack, but at the end of the day, it was, you know, all credit, and that was really down to Russell, to be honest. So so we're going to go through the cars a little bit, and just have a little chat about some of the cars. Mike's going to help me with the technical details, or a little bit more of the history of the vehicles, because and hopefully Michael help me a little bit as well, and just put the cream on the chat about some of the information about some of the cars, hopefully. So which would be the first car that he campaigned? It would be the Escort, wouldn't it, Mike?
Yeah, it was obviously we hadn't got any of the early Group 4 Escorts, but the one that we did have, the Monte Carlo car, that was something extremely unique. There were only 3 of those built in 1979, when Ford was getting towards the end of the career of the Escort. They made for Mikola and Voldegaard, and one for Russell, and an extremely unique car. The front suspension moved slightly forward so the engine could drop down lower. And to keep the wheelbase, the whole back bulkhead and everything was cut out and moved forwards. And they even cut the floor out and moved that up an inch, so the car actually sat lower. In mechanical fuel injection, it was an incredible car, one which he won the Manx with. It was on the Monte Carlo in '79, Voldegaard finished second. And the whole point was that the Escort was never a really good tarmac car. Fiat had the monopoly on that one. And on that '79 Monte Carlo, they beat all the works Fiats, which is what mattered. Fortunately, Bernard Darnishi Stratus was faster than everybody else, but that Escort was a unique bit of kit. And, you know, Kevin Bates owning that, he's done a brilliant job of keeping it as it was, because you'll remember back in the 1979, Russell seemed to do everything possible to turn that car into a yellow banana. He, apart from the Manx, I mean, Circuit of Ireland, he landed on a wall, and there was all sorts of moments when the car was bent, and it's done a brilliant job of restoring a very unique car. And but it was just a shame that we didn't have the next car in the progression, the Sunbeam. But that was an unfortunate situation. Yeah. Because one of the things about Russell is he was always knew that to be competitive, he had to be in the car of the moment. And the Escort was starting to, well, it was getting tired, getting long in the tooth. There was no more development left. Des O'Dell had turned to Russell and offered him a drive. Tony Pond, who'd been driving in '79, had gone back to BL. So Des O'Dell brought Russell in. We had the Andrews Heat for Hire Sunbeam, which sadly in 1980 was a little bit unreliable. He had a lot of bad luck with it. The car had potential, but he had a lot of bad luck, few podiums and things like that. But one fact in 1980 was any British event where Toivonen was in the same car, Russell was faster. It was only on the RAC rally that Toivonen won outright, Freckland third, Russell fourth. But on the Scottish, Russell was fastest. In Wales, Russell was fastest. It proved the potential of the chap. But as I said, trying to be in the most competitive car possible, in 1981, Russell tried to get his hands on a Quattro. Just imagine what it would have been like to have an Andrews Heat for Hire Quattro in the British Park. That would have been the case of Jimmy would never have stood a chance. Jimmy's 5 championships, no, wouldn't have happened. It would have been the other way around. But unfortunately, the deal fell through. Des O'Dell stepped back in and said, you know, we'll give you another car. Mike Little will prepare it for you. And the car that John's got now is that particular car. It's and that was one that was a bit more reliable, and Russell was really in the swing with it. He did say he actually enjoyed driving the Sunbeam. And
Mike,
I remember at Race Retro when Jimmy McRae drove that Sunbeam. He actually said he didn't know how Russell hadn't won everything in that car. He actually to drive that. Yeah,
Mike Broad, can you shed any light on the story with the Quattro? Were you about at that time?
No, I can't actually, because that was the first year that I joined Russell. And in fact, it was Rob's mum that had phoned me up first at the end of 1980 to see if I was available for 81. So, sorry, 80, 81. And I was. So I didn't really know that he'd done anything with an Audi Quattro, because all he told me is that we were going to sit in this Sunbeam Talbot. And I think we used EVC 666 to start with. And I think we won a couple of events with it. I remember winning the Pirelli Rally in the September before we did the RAC in John Leahy's car. It was competitive, but we did. It was, whether it was the Mike Little's preparation or whatever, I'm not sure, but it was unreliable. It wasn't as reliable as the factory cars, let's put it that way, at that time. That was EVC. And then, of course, we used the car that's up for sale now for the RAC that year and went off. And I can't really remember too much about that accident, apart from the fact that it was in Grisdale. And I remember Russell saying, have you got your map with you? And I said, of course I've bloody got the map with me. And he said, find the nearest pub. So literally, I told him where the pub was, and then I had to stay with the car, and he walked off and went to the pub. So I mean, I knew which pub he was in. So when they came with the tow truck to pull us out, I mean, literally, it wasn't a big accident. It was just the one that you couldn't get back up on the road, and there was no speckies in the middle of Grisdale. So sort of half an hour later, we arrived on the back of this tow truck in the pub and stayed there for a few hours, to be honest. But no, that was my first year and with Russell, and it's absolutely right what Michael says, actually, because at the end of that year it was pretty obvious that we had to move on, and General Motors then came along and gave us the Chevette. And I remember that was 82, he desperately wanted a Manta in 83, but we weren't allowed. I don't know what the deals were with Vauxhall and Opel and all the other bits and pieces, but we had to stay with the Chevette, with the Blydensteiner Chevette, 1 year too long, really. But having said that, Russell loved that Chevette. He absolutely loved it. He reckoned that was the best handling tarmac car he ever drove, including the Manta, to be honest. Right. We got the record on West Baldwin. Was it East Baldwin? No, East Baldwin. Downhill from Druidale down, yeah, and we got that in 83 in the Chevette, and it stood for 10 years. Now you think about that, that's all the way through Cosworths, 6R4s, Quattros, etc., Lanciers, whatever came up. That Chevette downhill tells you one thing: A, it handled, and B, it got guts. Yeah. In fact,
I know it very, very well. I've been down there at silly speeds myself. But,
well, from that. Just from that stage, we changed our pace notes because I couldn't get the pace notes out in time. We had to simplify the pace notes so that my delivery, he could remember what it was. I didn't really need to remember, because those were the days we used to go out in the middle of the night with the rally car and practice for 2 hours. But, you couldn't remember everything. But I remember getting down to the T-junction at the bottom of East Baldwin one evening, and I said, I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm tongue-tied. I just cannot do it. So we sat the following morning over breakfast and changed the pace note. and all we did was take out the word absolute.
Right.
We got absolute flat, or absolute left, or absolute right, or whatever.
Yeah.
And he said, well, hang on a minute. If you say left and right, that means left. We've got a flat, we've got a fast, mediums, easies. It was descriptive. But if I said left and right, he says, I'll know it's absolute. So why do we need that word? And down there is so many little tiny ones. Left, right, 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 left, right. You know, there you go.
I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine.
Very simple.
You have to keep
And I
saying
didn't
that every
repeat it too much, actually, either, James. I wonder if he heard that.
He did. He's laughing. That brings on to the Chevette.
Basically,
Chevette.
everybody talks about Jimmy and Russell.
Yeah.
Those years. But before that, Russell was in effect following in the footsteps of the driver who was my hero, Tony Pond.
Yeah.
The Sunbeam he started off with in 1980 was the car that Pond had used.
Yeah.
The first Chevette was the car that Pond won the Manx with.
Yeah.
You know, and the one you talk about in 83, XEG, was that was the car at Race Retro. That was the car I always think of as being Cyril Bolton's car, because Cyril had that in later years.
Yeah.
But the thing that gets me about 1983 and the events that you were doing was that was the year of Stig Blomqvist, of Henry Toivonen, Vatanen and McRae in the Opals. Yet Russell finished second overall in the BRC, only 3 points behind the Stig and 10 points ahead of Jimmy. You know, that was, yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
the car that was on 13-inch wheels.
Correct. Yeah.
That's going some.
Oh, if you could screw another 5 mile an hour out of it, he would. You know.
Yeah.
Ironically, I mean, I was lucky enough to sit with Tony Pond for almost 2 years in 74 and 75 in the Cadet, Ascona and the Cadet. And Tony was a completely different driver to Russell. Tony was smooth. Tony was more a tarmac driver than a gravel driver, but he got some good results on gravel. But he was good a racing driver as well as Pond. Yes, he was determined, but not as determined as Russell. Russell, you know, I mean that on that video just now where you saw he rolled on the first stage of the Scottish, and Tony Fall and I were in the Cadet that year, and you know, I remember seeing that car at the end of the first stage, and I thought, well, that's him gone. And he won. Yeah, and that was a typical Russell. He was something like 95th at the end of the first stage, and he bit by bit got it all back. And that is absolutely classic Brookes. Fantastic. Yeah. And I think, you know, that the Brookes McRae thing, it was great publicity, rather like, you know, the British version of McRae and Burns, wasn't it, really?
Yeah.
They did and they didn't get on. I mean, it was almost true what the journalists were saying. There was a great I remember one time on a circuit, and I can't remember what year it was, that Jimmy turned up with glasses, and I said something in front of Russell with Jimmy there about, well, it's about time he bloody had them. He said, it wasn't you that told him to go and buy it, was it? And I said, why is that? He said, well, you know, he can't see in the dark, and he's only just found out now he's got a pair of glasses. We could always beat McRae at night, always. But it was a bit later when he got a pair of glasses.
But I mean, as you said before, with GM not knowing how they were thinking, because Dealer Opel team and DTB had joined together to GM. I mean, eventually it was inevitable he was going to end up in a Manta, and that we had 2 of those Mantas at Race Retro. Of course, ADZ31, the legendary bendy bus. You sat in that car. How flexible was it?
Oh, it was flexible. It really was. I mean, I was team coordinator in the day, and I was actually with the lads when we went and we got the shell done. It was a dipped shell. It was as thin as rice paper. Yeah. I found a business in Smethwick, and we boarded up on the back of a unit and tossed it in the acid and brought it back again, and it did flex. I mean, the side doors would flex. over big jumps. And it was a lot lighter, but it wasn't as nice to drive as the SMK, was it?
SMK was his first one, yeah, 351Y.
Yeah, the balance of that car was really, really good. I mean, I must admit, I do remember a few cars, but you know, somebody asked me about how many Talbot Sunbeams did I sit in, and I said I haven't a bloody clue. To be honest, if it got Andrew's Eat for R in it, I got in it. It was as simple as that. I can't remember what registration was on what car and doing what. You know, it's a good job that other people like you have got history of which cars we sat in.
Well, that's it. It's called the internet. But
well, yeah. You see, there was a demarcation in those days. I mean, on the left-hand side, you've got the sensible bloke with the piece of paper and the pencil and everything else. And on the right-hand side, you've got the maniac. But he was also the person that had to do all the mechanicking. I mean, the co-drivers union in the 70s and 80s meant that you weren't supposed to do things like getting your hands dirty. So if anything went wrong, that was the other person's problem. Nowadays in WRC, I mean, the co-drivers have to be as good a mechanic as the mechanics. I'd have probably struggled with that, to be honest, to be brutally honest.
I always say that the driver's job is quite simple. He only has to get you and your time card to the other end of the stage in one piece and on time. That's it.
Yeah.
We do all the thinking.
There's a really good story when the first year that I did looking at that photograph of the Chevette at the Manx. The one thing that I gave Russell the job of was looking after the key, because in those days there were such things. I did everything else apart from look after the rally car key. And on that event, and I think it was in that car, at the start of the Manx on the Friday, we arrived at the end of the prom 10 minutes, 15 minutes before going into Parc Fermé. And I looked at Russell and I said, yeah, you got the key with you? And he says, no, you've got that. And I said, no, I haven't. You've got it. So we had this little bit of an argument when the penny dropped and he realised that it was his problem and he hadn't got it with him. It was in his hotel room, which was the Palace Hotel at the opposite end of the promenade. Yeah. And I said, well, you better get going. You've got about 11 minutes. And he ran into the middle of the traffic. And there were thousands of people in those days used to go and watch the Manx at the start even. And this poor lady in a Morris Marina happened to be coming around the corner at the end where the shipping terminal is. And he just literally ran in front of her and stopped it, got in and said, take me to the Palace Hotel. So I got a handheld radio, got onto Robin Turvey and told him what the problem was. And I said, where are you? And he was just leaving the hotel. So I said, go back into the room and get the key from Russell's room and see if he can find the rally car key, which he did, thank goodness. And this lady arrived at the bottom of the steps, shaking because Russell was shouting at him so much, to the point that on the way back, he drove her car back. We had about 3 minutes to spare before we got on the ramp. We did it. There was no problem. And I said, let that be a lesson. You're the key, not me.
That's it. That's driver's job. Exactly. But we're saying about the cars that we had at Race Retro. We also had another one that you had a good result in. We had the ADZ 4330, which was the Welsh winner. Yeah, but also most people would know it being the car that the prop shaft went on the 87 Ulster. Yeah. Yes. How was that?
Well, the prop shaft thing, everybody said, you know, you're very calm and everything, you know what happened. The only reason that I was so cool, calm and collected, of course, that it had happened before on the 1980, whichever circuit of Ireland we retired on the first stage, and it was either 84 or 85, I can't remember. And we were literally 400-500 yards into the first stage of the Circuit of Ireland, probably Hamilton's Folly, something like that. And the prop shaft let go and nearly sliced the car in two. So I was so frightened over that. I remembered exactly what it was. So when it happened on the Ulster in 87, it sounds very cool and calm, but I knew what it was. It was about the only thing mechanically that I knew would have gone wrong and knew what to say. So I said, that's it, over, finished, gone. And the ironic thing was that the guy that stood as a spectator where we parked on the Circuit of Ireland on the very first stage, when we came to a halt in 1987 on the Ulster, and pulled it in. If you have a look at the video, there's a house, bungalow, whatever, on the left-hand side where we pull it in. That was his house. Same man. Exactly. Russell said, I don't want to see you ever again.
But in '87, I mean, that was the year, obviously, that the Manta was sort of given a disposition to keep going on BRC events that weren't part of the European Championship. So obviously, out was wheeled the Cadet, which history tells me that was originally driven by Andrew Wood. Then Russell had the Cadet, a car that actually has been, everybody's driven that. Derek Bell drove it, Malcolm Wilson drove it, Dave Metcalf drove it. But you co-drove in that car as well, didn't you? How did he adapt to go back to front wheel drive? Because it's been a long time.
It was a long time, and it was duck to water. He loved it. He was very, very good at it. He did like front wheel drive, and we'll come on to the 4 pedals in a minute. He never used left foot braking.
Yeah,
he just couldn't do it. Now, whether I never asked him, I should have asked him, shouldn't I? I don't know whether Robert could tell us, but whether it was he just couldn't bring his left foot across and dab the brakes, I'm not sure, but he never used it. And to get the speed, if you look at the circuit that we did in '87 in that car against the Cosworths and McRae and everything else, Lovell, all that, we were leading at one point. We were definitely in the top 3 for 2 days in that little Astra, and it was an 8 valve.
Yeah,
it wasn't the 16 valve that came a bit later, and we were with them. And I'll tell you, the commitment, the speed that he had to carry through the corners to keep up with that lot. He was a natural in front wheel drive car. There's absolutely, and it goes back to the minis, because that's where he first came from. I mean, I first met Russell in '68 when I did the RAC I was only 3 I was 18. My first RAC, he actually, Russell and Roger were our service crew. So I'd known Russell for sort of 50 odd years through his life, really. And he made his name in minis to start with, apart from smashing up his dad's car to start with. But minis were his favourite. And he really did drive that Astra very, very well. But obviously, he moved on to the Lancia because he could not say no to Cesar Fiorio. I mean, if Fiorio comes along and says, yes, you can have a Lancia, he does it, doesn't he? And that was, and that's when I split. And it was an amicable split. It really was lovely, because I needed to make a living out of what I was doing. And Russell couldn't guarantee that after the Lancia, what was going to happen the following year. That's why I stayed with General Motors and got me Metcalf the following year, and Malcolm and a few others. But I was coming to the end anyway. I was getting tired. I was 40, and it was about time I was looking to management more than anything else. Oh, there we go. Oh, yes. Does anybody know what that's about?
No idea at all. I know nothing.
Right.
One question that moved me on to another question. We'll come back to the race retro cars in a minute. You co-drove for Metcalf.
Yes.
That man was so quick. Another massive loss to everything. To sit in with somebody that sideways in a front wheel drive.
He was as quick as Colin McRae.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. They had some issues, and it's naughty of me to say things when he's not here to defend himself, but we did have some problems in trying to control Dave. I mean, he was absolutely lightning quick and could squeeze the pip out of anything. I mean, you know what he did with the Nova after the year I was with him, but he was staggeringly quick, yes, but he couldn't switch off. And some of the road sections was a real nightmare to keep him down to being sensible. He wasn't a worldly wide type of chap either. I remember I took him out to the Acropolis the year that Jimmy and Ian did it in a one car team. And I took him over there because I needed to get him to find out whether he was, a bloke that was going to be able to do the World or European Championships. He hated Greece. He just couldn't couldn't understand why it wasn't the Lake District. You know, why isn't it green?
Yeah.
It was a really big shock to me, as much as him, that he I wouldn't say he didn't enjoy it. He just was not comfortable outside the United Kingdom
Or outside the Lake District.
Yeah, he was a home boy. But by golly, was he quick? I mean, he really was quick. Yeah, and as you say, had he got the breaks, he was as quick. I only went with Colin once, and that was a very early part of his career. But Dave was just as quick as Colin McRae.
I remember Dave from his road rally days, and he was quick through the northern lanes in a Mark 1 Cortina, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
Going back to the race retro cars, I mean, we've talked about the previous cars, the Astra, and then obviously that leads us on to the Sierra. And I remember he was saying the one thing about the Sierra is that it reminded him of the Chevette as to how stable it was.
Yeah. Yes, with another 100 brake horsepower.
Yeah, that's it. It was. He was saying that the torque, you could come out of corners in 5th gear and it would still be as quick. You didn't need to change down.
Yeah, and Russell was coming to the end of his career and yet could still win rallies in that car.
Yeah.
You know, there was Mark Lovell there in his early 20s, but Russell, if you think of it, he was sort of 45, 46 years of age when he was in the Sierra Cosworths, and yet could still beat anybody. And that, ironically, that team was run by Mike Little, who ran the
that's it.
The Sunbeams.
It's a close-knit world. I've been trying to find the other missing link, which is the Lancia,
Right.
to see if it still exists. I know it went on. It was Kankanen's car for the 1,000 Lakes. Then Russell had it for the RAC, and then it went on to Jolly Club, and that seems to be the last heard of it. I don't know what happened to that car. It would be great if that came back in Andrew's colours.
There's a number of Italian guys that have got some really serious museums, private museums. I bet it's buried in there somewhere.
Yeah, more than likely. But all these cars all tie together with one driver who, to me, they all say that you should never meet your heroes. but I mean, I'll never meet Tony Pons, sadly. But Russell, when I did meet him, well, he wasn't a disappointment. That man was a true gentleman. And it was just, well, I've never known a driver as media savvy as him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the car would come into service, and the first thing he'd do, straight out of the car, straight to Barry Hinchcliffe.
On the one Ulster rally we did, we came down a straight. It was a right-hander. It was about a long 400 to 600 yards straight, and I would never. You're listening. I'd never repeat unless he asked me to repeat. So I came round flat right 400 and sat there, and you wait, and then 200 before you go in, and T-junction turn 90 right, and I'm thinking he's on the wrong side of the road for this, and he's staying on the right-hand side of the road. And it's on board. You can see it on the YouTubes now. And I thought, right at the last minute, I thought, he's going to turn left here. And you can see my hand come straight across, and I'm shouting effing and blinding at him, right. And we got round the corner and off. And I got to the end of the stage. I thought, what the hell were you doing? Oh, he says, I'm just winding you. I said, you weren't, etc. So I went to Barry, and I said, look, we've just had this, got on boards. I said, yeah, it'll be a bit embarrassing for Russell. Would you make sure? Yeah, okay, Mike. So I'm sitting there watching Grandstand the following Saturday, and there it is. So I phoned Russell up. I said, I thought we agreed we weren't having that in. He said, yeah, I went back and told him to put it in. It's great advertising, isn't it?
That is so mean.
Wouldn't
so
miss a trick. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, we've got Rob there. I mean, come into it, Rob. You know your dad as to how he was with people. What input could you put into this?
Well, Dad was very good at networking, and he has an incredible number of friends that spread all the way through his life, and something that he was very good at doing. That something that I need to try and improve on myself is keeping in touch with people. And certainly in the later years, and I'm sure Mike will agree, I swear Dad must have just sat in his office all day long, going through his phone book, talking to everybody that he had something to do with. So back in kind of October, November, the outpouring was absolutely amazing. And I've never come across, and I don't know anybody who has managed to keep such a broad spectrum of people in their lives. It's quite a special trait to have, really. It's very special.
He would have a friend that he knew from primary school, and he'd know him just as well as he knew me, because he was going. It was stunning. I'm still looking at that poster behind you, Rob. Is it a poster?
No, it's not. It's a picture of SMK 351Y. I believe it's the one that hung in the print company in Redditch for many years. And has found its way onto the wall here. So I believe it's a very dusty Scottish, but I'm sure I'll be corrected if that's not.
Yeah, no, that looks like a Scottish to me. Isn't it lovely?
It's,
really?
Yeah, it's a great image. So
looks like
very proud of it.
The thing is, Mike, all the dust will be behind you.
Yeah. I don't do dust.
How did you go on in the Manta with the lack of ventilation? Did dust actually get in the car?
Yes, it did. I think the worst. The UK wasn't too bad. The two rallies that I really remember were awful was Cyprus, which was just, it was a cooker. I mean, literally it was 30, 35 degrees outside, and it was probably 50, 55 degrees inside. And I remember the stages up in the Troodos Mountains are so slow. I mean, the average speed would probably be about 35 miles an hour on the event. So you can imagine how long it took to recce. It took nearly 2 weeks to go around everything twice because of the speed. And I remember on the event one year, we actually spun at a crossroads, and we had to sit there for the dust to dissipate before we could move, because we had no idea which way we're facing. It was horrendous. And the other one was Bahrain. That was just the same. And it seemed to suck it up. They were hot beasts. They really, really were hot. Not pleasant. They were very comfortable cars to sit in as a co-driver. I always remember being dead jealous when I saw Grindrod in the Rothmans car when we were in the Chevette. Couldn't believe the space that he had got compared to me in the little Chevette, tight elbows in and everything else. And there's Grindrod sitting in like an armchair. It was brilliant. So from that point of view, it was very comfortable because, with a Manta with the long wheelbase and the wide wheelbase, it took the bumps now, and, it was a very comfortable car to sit in. Really nice. Yeah.
Ian would have plenty of places to keep his packets of Rothmans.
Yeah. Well, we all smoked in those days, didn't we? Crikey, it was unbelievable. I mean, every co-driver did that. That was get out and have a fag and find out what time you were doing, and everybody was smoking except Russell. Russell never smoked. No. Russell was very good at drinking quality wines, and he loved gastronomic. Don't blame him. It was good. And the lovely thing about Russell was his interest in where you were and where you were going, even though we were doing the Welsh or the Manx for the 17th time or whatever it was. We'd always find somewhere different to go and see when we were doing the recce. We would all, I mean, I remember going to see there's a cat's graveyard on one of the stages, and we actually found that. We went to Arboretums. I remember when he did the RAC Historic, and he did it with the journalist, Rob, who was it that he did it with? The Formula One journalist. Can't remember his name.
I want to say Hamilton, but I don't know if that's correct, is it?
Yes, Hamilton, correct. Hamilton.
Maurice Hamilton, yeah.
And I remember Maurice phoning me up, and he was very, very concerned about sitting with Russell and doing such a big high-profile event, and they were in a Porsche, and they were car number one and all that. And I said, listen, Russell will get you around, even if you don't say anything, he will get you around. He's as good a co-driver as I am, and he will take over. So there's no worries about it whatsoever. And I said, also, Maurice, you will have the most interesting drive because it's very relaxed between the stages, and he'll teach you all about castles. He'll probably tell you what a spire of a particular church is and what era they come from, and the historics behind that Georgian house on the left-hand side as you go down Pulteney Street. he phoned me up after the rally and he said, "Do you know we got to the end of Pulteney Street?" And he told me what that church was at the end. And I mean, he loved it, didn't he? He wasn't an historian from school days. He learned that, but he was so interested in where we were going. And when we went abroad, we had to spend a day specifically going around the area that you were there, just to feel comfortable. It was very interesting guy. Lovely.
Oh, Rob, what was that like as his son traveling around the world? Oh, well, around the place with. Was it that a similar sort of thing with yourself, or?
Yeah, it was. I mean, something to bear in mind. I was born in '81, so when Dad was kind of at the peak of his heyday and the golden years of rallying was happening, in some respects, I was almost blissfully unaware to it. And it's only in recent years that I think it's really kind of sunk in and hit home as to quite what he achieved during those years and the impact that he's had. And I sit back and I think now about the holidays that we had. And they are exactly as Mike said. He would know everywhere. He would have. There was always an adventure around the corner. I know Mike's just mentioned about castles and what have you, but I've got vivid memories of days doing tours of castles, but it was always done in a very special way. It was never done through the front door of the castle. It was always done through the back door, or it was done on an adventure with a bicycle or something like that. So it was. Yeah, your life was full of adventure, and I think that's probably born of the fact that, sitting in a rally car probably gives you a slightly different view of what's dangerous and what's not. So yeah, it was great days.
Just a brief.
That's the difference between roundy drivers and rallies.
Absolutely,
we go places, we see things.
I absolutely agree. I remember doing a forum with Tony Pond up in Glasgow with Jonathan Palmer and Johnny Dumfries as the racing boys, and by God were they boring. And Pond told them. And Pond had just come back from the safari. I didn't do that with him that time. I think Rob Arthur did it with him, and had some wonderful stories and had everybody absolutely on the floor. And these two racing drivers just and still are the most boring guys I've ever met. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, they just go around in circles, don't they?
Are you still there, Tim?
Yes, I'm still here. Yeah.
I'm going to hand over to you now because I've talked too much as it is. So,
You've talked too much. It's not like you, Mike. You've done a good job there. I'm very impressed with you. We might keep you.
I'm going to pour a bit of me beer now.
What you whistle?
I shall let you. One thing I wanted to add is that obviously with the cars at Race Retro, which is what we were talking about, just want to mention the drivers that brought them. There was Kevin Bates, John Leahy, who we've got on tonight, Graham Sherry, Adrian Kermode, Tom Blackwood, Mick Goddard, who brought the 4S, and Pete Swift, who brought the Jimmy McRae Delco car. So all credit to them for bringing it on.
Pete Smith, yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, Mike, as well. Yeah, I'd like to thank everybody that did bring a car and put the effort into. And there was other people as well that brought cars that ran on the rally stage as well. So, that's it was good. It was a fitting tribute, and everybody did us proud, really. To be honest, I was very pleased with the turnout of cars, and we could, look at that picture. That's just
fantastic.
Unbelievable. That's unbelievable. There is another picture about somewhere which is taken from the balcony. And I can't remember. I don't know. It was Sid that took it. But they just look like models. They just like model cars just sat there. They're unbelievable. And the reason we put the Delco car in there was to portray the rivalry between the two.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
That was the idea. And I did invite Jimmy McRae to come on tonight. Unfortunately, it was very last minute because it was only when I was going through and he hasn't been able to come on tonight because he had something else going on. But it was, and that's no detriment to Jim. That's because I only invited him this afternoon. But that was because I was looking through what we were going to do and how we're going to talk through the display of the cars. And then because it was a Russell tribute, I never really thought about the Delco car that I put in at the time to portray the rivalry. And I thought, you know what? I wonder if Jim would be interested in coming on and just having a chat about that rivalry as well. But unfortunately, he hasn't been able to. But he said he would have loved to have done, but unfortunately, he hasn't been able to make it. But But yeah, so there was that, and of course it has been great rivalry, and I think the stand looked really well. It did do him proud. It was nice that Rob and Julie came as well, and it was lovely to see all that. I mean, Robert, just again for yourself, what was it like? I know. Again, you've said that you missed most of his career, and he's the highlight of his career. But what was it like growing up in the Brookes household around the years? He was a rally driver.
It was exciting and full of stories. It would be long spells where Dad would be away, and as far as we were concerned, he was working, and that's what he would do. One thing that Dad was very good at doing was disappearing. I'm sure Mike will probably agree with this at the start of rally stages, but he would come back from an event, and as myself and my sister, of course, would want to be jumping up and down to see Dad, and he would suddenly disappear off to a corner and be quite tricky to find. But that was him coming out of rally mode, and I think looking back on it, probably moving into family mode. But looking back, it was just hugely exciting. There was lots going on. When Dad was a young boy, he had a very keen interest in making rockets, and that's something that he's carried on to me. And we would go down the local field and we'd launch these rockets. And for my son's last birthday, lo and behold, one of these rockets turned up. So we were very fortunate last summer to find ourselves back in a field and 3 generations flying these things, and it was just like being a young lad again. It's really fantastic. But
maybe that was his secret weapon. Maybe that's why he was so fast.
Maybe. I mean,
rocket powered.
There was a lovely story which his 2 best mates tell. They'd made this liquid fuel rocket, and they'd made it out of tin, and of course all the joints were soldered, and it was absolutely immaculate, this thing. And Dad's parents went out for a weekend, so they ran a curtain rail up the side of the chimney stack, and then they attached the rocket to the curtain rail with the clips you get on top of the curtain. And they said they've launched this rocket and it's gone shooting up the chimney stack. It's got to the top of the chimney stack and it's gone bang, and it exploded, and it's knocked half the chimney stack down. The local police have come round and they couldn't work out what had quite happened, and they really didn't have a clue. And I'll never forget that Dad said that he stood in the middle of the garden and he looked up and down the street, and 5 doors either side, everything looked absolutely fine. But then the next 5 doors up, every single pane of glass and all the greenhouses had been smashed all over the floor. But Dad's father was a builder and a very competent brickie. So of course the next challenge was, how do you get the chimney stack put up on a Thursday afternoon before the parents get back on a Sunday afternoon? So, he was a great chat with lots of very good stories that will keep coming out the woodwork, I'm sure.
I'm sure. And behind every good man, as they say, there's always a good woman.
Absolutely.
And I can imagine that Mum was quite a power behind.
Absolutely.
I think you probably just hit the nail on the head. Mum's very strong-willed. You know where you stand with my mother. But she's immensely loving and compassionate, and most of all, she was very supportive.
She's a brilliant cook.
She is, yes. So and again, it was a very loving family, and I'm very lucky to be able to carry that relationship on with my sister now. So it's we're very fortunate.
Rob, did you know that I actually bought your dad a Christmas present? I think it was the end of the probably 82 year Christmas, when I bought him they had just been introduced, these extendable dog leads.
Right, I haven't heard this one, no.
Right, well, I bought him it and sent it for Christmas, and I'm not sure he opened it at Christmas Day. I think he got it a few days afterwards. He phoned me up and said, why have you sent me a dog lead? And I said, do you remember the Worcester service area on the RAC rally? There was about 10,000 people there, and it was just down the road from your house, so most of them knew him. You couldn't move, and he disappeared, and I couldn't find him. At 5 or 6, he just went, and we had people standing on every single top of the truck looking mechanics going everywhere, and sort of 2 minutes before we were supposed to due out, he sort of wandered up. And I said, where the hell have you been? I said, don't you ever do that again. So I sent this Christmas present with the dog lead saying, if you do that again, I'm going to have to put a collar on it. And that's for you. Yeah, he was very good at wandering off.
He was, absolutely. But yeah, no, it's brilliant. It's brilliant.
And just to touch on a question that's come in, but I think we did sort of touch on this earlier anyway, Rob. But you know, I mean, back to the rivalry between Russell and Jim, and obviously his sons followed in Jimmy's footsteps, as we all well know. You know, did you believe you did a little bit of your rallying yourself? Is that right?
Yeah, I touched on it briefly. When I was younger, Dad wouldn't push things upon you, but he would support you in every way possible. So I think looking back on it, yes, he would have loved it if I'd got into the sport earlier, and I think I probably would have done as well, is the reality. But at the time, life was different. It wasn't surrounded by rallying per se, although obviously it was a major part of growing up, and he supported me in the decisions that I made and the direction that I went. And you know, life shortly after school was about fun and excitement. I was fortunate enough to run a kite surf school for many years and kind of live as a bit of a beach bum, which wasn't the greatest career and didn't have you know, longevity in it. But
how did that go down? How did that go down?
I think Mike probably knows the answer to that one.
I do actually. He talked a lot about it for many years. I think it's an indication that he allowed you to do what you wanted to do.
Absolutely.
Of what he was all about. He was concerned. He couldn't understand some of the things, no doubt about that. But he let you do it.
Absolutely, and he was supportive in the way that he did it. And that was how Dad was. It was great to step into a rally car later on in life. And I don't know if Mike remembers, but it was great to be
with the MG.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I remember.
So yeah, we had some good fun for 12 months. Unfortunately, life got in the way. So the point at which we were trying to raise some funding to run the car for another year, there was quite a serious recession kicking in, and I was at a stage in my life where I had to start thinking about careers and opportunities, and had to make a decision. And yes, it would have been fantastic to follow a path down rallying, but as we all know, it's very difficult to make a living from it. So I went in my own direction.
He didn't. I have to ask the question. He didn't fancy windsurfing then, did he not?
Well, I don't know if Mike knew this, but Dad never liked getting his hair wet. He was one thing he wasn't very good at was swimming. So no, I don't think windsurfing would have been his way.
Listen, in our day, Robert. I mean, Russell was 2 years older than me, and we didn't have things like swimming pool in Birmingham. I mean, there wasn't. You know, that the RNLI actually got more money out of the people from the West Midlands giving them donations because they knew that when they hit the coast, they were going to need them. It's true. So yeah, I was very much similar to Russell in that way. Yeah.
But I was very fortunate later on to kind of experience some rallying with Dad. We went over to, Dad got invited to New Zealand to do an event over there, and I don't know how we wangled it, but I found myself sat in the passenger seat of a Mark II Escort, and we did I think it was a 3-day event in New Zealand, which was absolutely just superb. The roads over there are so exciting and so fast, jumping from one camper to another. So that was brilliant. Mike briefly mentioned there was a 1967 Porsche. I don't know if it's still going. I think, don't quote me, but the registration was KBD92C. I was lucky enough to sit with Dad and co-drive on an event, and of course I wanted to do Dad proud. And I'll never forget, we went into the first stage and it was absolutely torrential rain. There was mud everywhere, and I was doing my best to read the pace notes. And we get to the end of the stage, and I've turned to Dad and I've said, "Wow, that was brilliant. How did I do?" And he said, "I don't know."
Wasn't listening.
I said, "What do you mean you don't know, Dad?" And he held up the intercom. He said, "I forgot to plug it in." So,
did he do that with you, Mike, most of the time?
No, he did. He did. I know. I mean, he was the boss. There's no doubt about that. But if I wanted him to do something, he bloody did it. No, we made a. We actually talked about. It was a business for us, and we talked about it being a business, and we virtually never saw each other between events. You know, it'd come from one rally. We'd talk maybe twice on the phone and go off and do another one. We kept it. That was our job. And I'm sure Robert remembers that as well. And it does take a few days when you're full time and you're doing an event sort of once or twice, 2 events a month. It is difficult to climb down for the 2 or 3 days you get at home, and then get back up again and off you go. It is difficult, and the WRC boys now that are doing all the testing as well, they're really are away 9 months of the year. We were only away 4 or 5 months of the year. So it wasn't so bad, but yeah, it was a business, and it had to be. And that's why Russell was so good, because with Andrews, it was a business. And John Andrews will tell you that as a result of the sponsorship deal that went on for those 17, 19 years, whatever it was, business increased. And that was down to Russell. There's no doubt about that. And John Andrews knows that. It's an amazing, amazing partnership that was.
I was going to touch on that. About the length of the sponsorship and it being such a long partnership. Rob, what do you remember about that in the sense of that sort of connection? I mean, was it did Russell work for Andrews? Is that what you thought?
Well, no, it was actually quite different, because although the rallying was treated as a job, John Andrews is my godfather, and there was obviously a very strong connection there. In terms of family that ran much deeper than just rallying. So for me, the connection with Andrews Heat for Hire wasn't a sponsorship deal that worked with each other. It was a deep family connection that we've still got to this day, and a family that's very special to us and will continue to be.
Yeah,
but having said that, Rob, the business did increase. There's absolutely no doubt about it. I mean, even as late as when Russell went to the Ford Cosworth era, which was 88, 89, 90, something like that. I remember John getting contracts out of Ford, out of the relationship that Russell had got for the rallying business. So, even in the bit right up to the mid 90s, the business of Andrews and Andrews Sykes was increasing through rallying, and that doesn't happen very often, if ever. Really, it's a marketing campaign where the companies spend money. Well, in John and Russell's point of view, it was a business that made money, and that's particularly difficult.
Absolutely, and it was obviously something that they both worked on very hard together.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was an awareness from my point of view that John was more than just a family member, but there was also a good connection there as well. It was
what a lovely man. Yeah,
absolutely fantastic.
With what you were saying there, that Mike Little actually became an Andrews agent up in Cumbria, just based on the connection with the Sierra. So it just,
I bet he didn't do much air conditioning up there, though, did he?
I think it was more the heat for hire what needed up there. That's it. But yeah, brilliant connections. Back to you, Tim.
Thank you. Just by the way, we obviously are on live on Facebook. If anybody's interested and want to comment or want a question for anybody that's on tonight, then please put your text messages on the video on the live feed, and if we can get to them, we've got Mark in the background there that's monitoring all that. So any questions for anybody on the panel, then please put them on there, and we'll see what we can do about getting them answered. So yeah, Rob, sorry, I've lost the chain of thought there with that slightly. I just want to touch back on the because I think it's an interesting story me and Mike spoke about, and there's lots of many interesting stories, and I don't know whether Jack's still there or whether he's fallen asleep, but can you find a picture, the cartoon from Jim Bamber again? because we sort of started to touch on it, but then never just finished it off. But there's a nice story from Russell. I don't know whether can people see that, or have you cut the bottom off it there? Is it just my computer?
I can see.
You see the full
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. It must just
Yeah, it's all good, Tim. Everybody can see it.
So yeah, there's an interesting story there, and it does relate to the Astra that we were talking about.
Yeah, this is a classic cartoon from Jim Bamber, and Vauxhall used to get Jim to come on some of the rallies, and he was a wonderful guy, and what a talent. And he'd just quietly get away in the background and listen, and he wouldn't say anything. And then a few weeks later, he'd get the cartoon like this. And this is portraying Russell on one side of the settee with 4 pieces of paper in front of him. And one says brake, the other says clutch, the other says brake, and the other says gas. And there's me on the other side with my pint of bitter. And I've got a Walkman on. And the little stuff around my head is actually Klingons on the Starboard Bow, which was the #1 record at the time. So you could sort of, somebody knows music, then put what year it was 87, 88, something like that. And it was Brian Ashwood. And as I said to Mike before, Russell loved front wheel drive, but he never left foot broke at all, ever. And then Brian Ashwood, who was the chief engineer of the project, came up and said, well, what happens if I put a 4th pedal in on the left-hand side as a handbrake, as a foot pedal? And unfortunately, we didn't have a lot of time to test. So we just did a little bit before we went to the Isle of Man, and we turned up the Isle of Man with 4 pedals. And the scrutineers threatened to throw us out, but they couldn't find anything in a blue book, yellow book, or any other book that said that you couldn't have 4 pedals. And we'd got a handbrake, which worked, and we had a foot brake. And I maintain, and Russell maintained, that if we'd have had, let's say, another week's practice before or even after, it would have worked. I'm certain it would have worked, because Russell, we used it on the rally, and I think, I can't remember where we came, 3rd, 4th, 5th, something like that. And he did use it on the rally. The problem was getting the right pressure on the brake so that he didn't sort of grab too much. But there's Jim Bamber with the cartoon of Russell practicing how to use 4 pedals. And I think the car has still got 4 pedals, or has it only got 3 pedals now?
No, it's still got 4 pedals. Yeah.
Has it really?
It's still got 4 pedals. Yeah, they're still there. We haven't just checked whether it's connected or not, but or whether it's just got the pin in it. But it's definitely still got 4 pedals.
Fantastic.
So yeah,
Tim, you've put your wallet underneath that 4 pedal to stop you pressing it too far down, haven't you?
Well, there came an opportunity. I mean, to say we've run Rally Group B for such a long time now, apart from we do have the Hyundai Coupe, which was a sort of test development car, but then ended up as a demonstration. As a recce car for Alistair McRae. And we found that car some time ago, and we restored it and we put it into sort of works colours, and it's been a great car, that. But we've never actually owned a full works piece of history to say we've run the group for so many years. And an opportunity came up. Actually, it was sort of just before Race Retro with a good friend of mine, Adrian Kermode, who'd found the car and restored the car, and he kept sending me, because he knows I'm a Astra fanatic, and along with Mike, we used to run the Vauxhall Challenge some many years ago, and I'm a massive Vauxhall fan. So Adrian kept sending me pictures of this car in build, and I fell in love with it, really. And then there came a time at Race Retro when I just saw the car and went, that's it. I need to sell everything, and I need to own that car. And yeah, and that's what's happened. So yeah, I don't know about so much of I've managed to put my wallet under it, but I've managed to put everything else under it, to be honest, to buy it. And it's yeah, and I'm very proud to own it now. So we'll be coming out a little bit ourselves with that as well. So and there's some more Russell tribute things going on in Ireland and other places, which we'll get involved with that as well. And we'll go and have some fun with that. May even take Rob with us, and he can come and co-drive.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
And maybe even Mike, maybe even Mike even drag himself out of retirement occasionally for a bit.
Whilst we've
We'll
still
see.
got Mike with us, there's a question has been asked on Facebook about the famous incident on the Manx with the Sierra. Obviously, you weren't with him then. It was back in Neil Wilson days, wasn't it? When Mark Lovell had to pull over. Do you know what the relationship was between Russell and Mark Lovell after that?
Very bad.
Mm.
No, don't think Lovell was too impressed with that. But you know, you've got to do these things. That's what it's about. And I remember talking to Russell about it, and you know, there was no question that Russell was #1 driver in that, and Mark wasn't.
Yeah.
And the maths had been done. And if he'd have won it, you know, he was champion again, and you know it was going to happen. So, you know, get used to it, lad, and just be very thankful you're in a works car and being paid to do what you're doing. And unfortunately, you've got to do this. I mean, I went on. I was very lucky to be a team manager for 2 or 3 years. I ran Malcolm and Malcolm Wilson when he was in the Astras, and Mats Johnson and Louise Aitken Walker and Metcalf and all that. And there was a couple of instances where I had to get very strong. And I won't tell you the details because you know I don't want to, but you've got to, and it is a business. Unfortunately, there are occasions where you've got to do something that some other people don't like. So, you know, Mr. Lovell came out of it all right in the end, I'm sure. And Mark was a really, really good driver, and he got his desserts in the end. He got his works drive and all the other bits and pieces. So it didn't harm his career. In fact, it probably helped his career because he, you know, Russell knew damn well that the film cameras, we're going back to Barry Inchcliffe again, aren't we? Park the car up there and it'll be on there for 3 and 4 minutes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Rob, do you remember much about that? I mean, I know you'd only be very young then, but do you remember much about that incident?
I don't at all, no.
No.
I've got really, really hazy recollections of sitting and watching Dad on TV in the Integrala that you've mentioned earlier on. And I believe, I think at the time, Mike, it was a left-hand drive car, was it not?
Was, yeah.
Yeah, which was something that Dad wasn't particularly used to. So I think part of the deal, we had a Lancia Integrala on the drive at home, left-hand drive, and again I can vividly remember I couldn't see over the dashboard because I was sat right down in the bucket seats, but I can remember the feel of the car, and I can certainly remember looking up at the trees flying by in a bit of a blur. So yeah, I think there's probably a bit of cheeky practice done on the roads round near home as well.
Yeah. Glad to hear he's just like the rest of us there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I do remember the Sierra Cosworth. I can remember as a young lad tearing around the lanes, and I don't know if anyone knows it. There's a little village near Wadborough, and you have I forgot the name of the pub now, but there's a pub just on the outskirts of the village. And we pulled out of a T-junction onto the main road, and he's lit the Sierra Cosworth up, and off we've gone through the speed limit. And the next thing we know, we've got blue lights come on. So because he's duly pulled over, and the next thing I know, I'm stood on the side of the road next to a policeman, while the other copper has a go in the Cosworth while they're blasting up and down the lanes. So it was, again, it was all good fun.
Yeah, I can imagine with Russell that bit. Yeah, that would just be the norm. That would be norm. Good. I think we're going to move on. I don't want to say goodbye to you both at the moment, unless you need to go. But I think we're going to move on a little bit. I'd like to bring John Leahy in, who's the owner of one. I know, of course, we've just let the cat out of the bag about the fact. Thanks, Mike, that now I own an Andrews car too. But the other person that was on here and is John. And John, what's it like to own a piece of history like that?
Am I on? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you fine now.
Yeah, it's amazing to have something, you know, so iconic, and especially I think the Sunbeam as well. Like, you know, it was something that, like Owen, right? Something we ran with in our early days, right? So having the Sunbeam, and especially the Andrews one, right, was, you know, it brought back some great memories from the 80s, you know.
Yeah. How did you come about getting that car? How did you find that? How did you come about? And I mean, obviously, I just told my story there briefly, but
I used to get the motoring news, right, and it just came up on the motoring news, right, and I just picked up the phone and said, "Is it still available?" Right, and it was, and I hopped on the plane from London, the train from London down to Newport, or down to not Newport, further down in Wales, right. Ian Evans had it down there, right, and it was there. So I just went in and had a look at it, looked around, and he said to me all the spares were in along underneath the shelves there, but I didn't see them. I didn't see enough of them really, like, what was there, like, and I looked, we had a good look around the car, right.
Just mesmerized with the car.
Yeah. And I did a bit of research before I went down, right, and spoke to a few people. Like, I spoke to the people that knew the car, right, and was trying to find out a bit about the car, right. But basically, it needed a lot of it. It was on Series 2, and it should have been on Series 1, and but that was all right. That was easy to change, like, and I had the stuff on the shelf. And the engine, basically what we were looking for was the engine, the gearbox, and the axle as being the one, right. And I got the telltale signs on the engine, right, that we could be okay there. The gearbox I didn't know, or the axle I didn't know, but they were the right pieces of kit, right. So as we got it back and took it apart, we realized that we had the three main pieces. We had the engine block. And I remember bringing it up to Phil Davison, and Phil scraping off about 10 layers of black paint, right? And there was our Brookes on the engine, and that was the engine number. Wow. And that was enough. It all started from there, right? And now we started to build it up into what it is today.
Was that in the Andrews colours when you found it, John?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Basically, the car came out of the Andrews colours in '81, or the end of '81, maybe early '82, right? And it was sold on in white. And then, right, it was at Skip Brown's, right? And it had an accident in testing, right? And the owner then, right, decided that we're looking for the car, and realized that the car was in the repair shop, and not more power in it, right? So they went and Skip Brown ended up owning the car, right? And then it went to the Himalayan Rally, and it was the '84 Himalayan. I think I sent some stuff through to Gary on it there the other day, right? I should have sent some stuff through tonight, right? And it stayed out there. It was on the Himalayan Rally, and then there was the assassination of Gandhi, right? So that stopped the rally in its tracks. But at the time the rally stopped, it was running car number 2 in the rally, right? It was actually leading the rally, and when the rally was stopped, and it sat out there then for a while, and it came home back to Skip Brown's, and I think it was red and blue or something, or red and white was the color of it, right? And it sat in Skip Brown's till about '91, and then Jason Lepley had it for about 9 or 10 years, and it was Jason actually turned it back into the Andrews colours, like,
Yeah, Jason's very good at finding originality in vehicles and stuff, and making them what they are. So good on him. He keeps history going. So
yeah,
good on him. He does.
And then I think it went from there. Then, right, it had a few owners. Kevin Vates had it for 6 months. It went back to Jason again, right, and then it went on to Baz Jordan. It did the 2003 red. What was it? Was it the red? Not the red kite. The red Robin Hood. 2003 Robin Hood, right? And then it was, I don't know, it changed hands again, and Andrew hadn't had it. And Ian Evans had it, but would have been on a trade-in because he was trading rally cars at the time, and I've taken it from there. And
I think you've done a great job with that, to be honest. I mean, Russell drove that car so many times, and he was synonymous with Race Retro in that car, and you know, it was amazing to see him, and it was always like, I mean, Mike has a funny story. Michael has a funny story. I'm sure he'll share with us in a minute. But you know, it was like putting on a pair of old slippers, to be honest with you. And he just never lost it with that car, and it was amazing to watch it. With some video footage, I don't know if Jack can get it on or not, but with some footage of him driving that car at Race Retro, and you know, it would only be a few years ago, to be honest with you, and he still pedalled it very hard, as he did with the Mantra as well, to be honest with you. So he never seemed to lose it right up to the end.
Yeah, it was always my attitude with the car, right? Whoever got the car, you know, you went out and you drove it, right? You drove it, right, to, you know, to its best, to your best ability, and you know, you weren't there to make up the numbers. You were there to put on the show or to win the rally. That was that was my objective, like, you know. So, but was one great story with Russell in the car was we always had problems starting the car, right? And you know, we'd go in, right, and we'd try and start the car, no chance. So Russell just comes along, I think it was rally day, and I was trying to get the car started and it wouldn't start, right? And he said, let me check. And he just goes in, right, pumps the accelerator, holds it off, turns the key, and the car starts straight away. And since that day, I've never had an issue starting the car.
No.
You know,
no.
So,
well, we've got a little bit of footage here. I don't know, this is the. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, this is the one, right, when he done the 2010. Yeah, this is. He was on fire this weekend, right, at the thing, right, the Ellen Watkins there, yeah. And Mike Stafford and the friends there. Brilliant.
Yeah. No, he certainly could pedal it, and he was as quick as anybody else, even you know, in his later days of Race Retro. Look at that. Brilliant shot.
Mm. Yeah, so when he done the 2008 Killarney Historic Stages, and that was the first really competitive event he done on it, right? And like, there's footage there, right, of the video. We have the Killarney Historic video, right? And you know, after the first loop of 2 stages, like, he had pulled 18 seconds away from everybody in the rally, like, you know what I mean? And that's just goes to prove, right, that, you know, he never lost it, like, you know.
No, he never did. I mean, Mike, just to your story about when he was on his, he came to the stand when you were on the stand.
That was
it last year? Was it last year?
I think it was last year. Oh, it's time. Well, as we get older,
yeah, February 19.
Yeah, he was running around with the
scooter,
the scooter thing, yeah. And he comes down. I comes down to me and I said, "How are you enjoying it, Russell?" He said, "It's okay, right, but I've one problem." He said, "I'm not in the car."
When he came onto our stand at Race Retro, he was on his mobility scooter because obviously he was getting difficulty moving around. He came onto the stand for a chat and he was looking at ADZ 31, and I said, "Do you want to jump into the car?" And he looked at me and said, "Can I?" So, "It's your car, man. Jump in." And he jumped into the car, and it was like an old pair of gloves. He just dropped in. The steering wheel, the gear lever, and everything was just exactly.
Well, it would have been, yeah.
And it was like the years dropped off him. It was when he got back out of the car, he decided to show me how his mobility scooter broke down into 3 usual pieces. And there in the middle of the RWGB stand, he stripped down the mobility scooter. Everybody stood around fascinated as he put it back together, got on it, and just drove away.
Yeah.
Such a character.
Mike, was he good, Mike, at mechanical at Fettling?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very, very good. I mean, in the early days, in the 70s, early 70s, he used to do most of the stuff himself. Remember one weekend I did. I mean, the amount of rallies that Russell did, especially on the Motor News weekends. I did a rally with him when he was doing the Ford Mexico Championship. I think it was 72 or 73, where I went up with him and did the equivalent of what the Granite Rally is now, based up Clash and Darrick and that area. And then he went down to the Edinburgh airport at 6 o'clock on Saturday night, flew to Norwich and did the Dubonnet Rally, which was a Motor News rally that night that started at 10 o'clock in the evening, and did a rally all night with John Brown. We didn't do very well up in Scotland, but I think he won the one in Norwich. And he used to do, yes, he was very, very good at he always wanted to know, what the engineers had done to whatever. If something was new, he had to sit down with them and find out what they'd done. So yeah, thankfully on my side of the fence, he was brilliant, because I couldn't do it.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So John, you've got this car. You've had the car for 15 years?
15 years.
15 years. Yeah.
15 years gone, actually. Yeah, but
that's some ownership. Yeah. I mean, we had Kevin and Andy on a few months ago with the sale of the T16.
Yeah, around the same time.
Yeah, and it was quite emotional, really, because they'd owned the car for such a long time. And I know, because I know them both personally, I know it was difficult for them to make that decision to sell that car. And I presume it must be a very similar situation for yourself.
Yeah, it is, right, because Scally will tell you, right, that I spent a lot of time, talking about it and telling him much, the offers that were made on the car, right, and there was people talking all the time, and but obviously nobody was coming across with the pound notes, right? So I just said, what I mean, the opportunity was there to come to me, right, and buy the car, right? And it didn't happen. So I said, right, okay, let's go. Let's what do you call it? Let's go now, because I had the car, during probably the golden era of historic rally, and with. And Russell did so much in the car, right? And it's now, right, I can't do any more with the car. I need to put it in the museum, basically. And it's not.
It does come to a point. There does come to a point, doesn't there, when things reach a value that or that they become very difficult to use, and there will be people out there that that would probably still use the car, but from a collector's point of view, that it's a very difficult time in any car ownership situation, especially a collector's piece like that, really. And I'd like to bring Gary in at this particular point if I can. Gary from Silverstone Auctions, you're involved with the car with regarding that. But I mean, how do you feel things are now with valuing cars of that sort of caliber?
The reality is, Tim, it's always a little bit difficult with a rally car and many motor racing cars, because lots of people know each other in the circles, and they all know if a car's going to be available and going to be available to sell or available to buy, as the case may be. So quite often it is a little bit of a finger in the air. As I said earlier, myself and John have been talking about this for 3 years, and he just wasn't ever at a point where he wanted to do it. It wasn't the right point. He wanted to get it back to race retro. He wanted to do the various things, and I think it's been a wrench for him, no doubt. I mean, when he brought the car over the other week, he was with us for 2 days plus, getting it ready for the sale and getting photographs of it in situation and all the various things. So this isn't something that he's done easily. We know that, You know, there's an emotional attachment. He's talked to me over the last few years about, you know, the racing it's done, and you know the various drivers who've used it, Owen, etc. And that he's always wanted it to be a competitive car. So when we come to evaluation, we don't know what that car's going to be worth. You know, the reality is we don't know. But what we have is enough experience where we can come up with what we believe is a guide figure at which we think we've got a chance of selling it for John. And that's the truth. And we think if we've got the guide at the right level, then you get interest. And then when you've got enough interest, interest becomes intent, and then you get a result. And as we know from, you know, I was talking with the chaps with the Peugeot back in May, and you know where the car was hoped to achieve and what it subsequently achieved were, you know, markedly different. But it was all about, we got two interested parties who wanted to buy that car.
Yeah.
And that's how ultimately it achieved what it achieved. But you know, by recollection, it was Kevin. I was on the phone with him on the day and said, look, you're gonna have to trust me a little bit here. You know, he'd got a very fixed figure in his mind at which it could go on sale, and I said I need to do it now, which was a little bit earlier than he wanted it to do.
Oh, we were sat through it. We watched it all.
Exactly. you know exactly what I said to him, and I think we're at 244,000.
Yeah.
And all I knew was I'd got some interest that we can never gather how much interest there is online. We just don't know. There could be one person sat there. There could be 200. But what I did know is I'd got two people in the room that were on the telephone. And once they'd gone from moving in 5s and 10,000s and they were down to 2,000s, the last thing I needed for Kevin was for one of them to sit there and say, no, I'm out. So I said, let's get it on sale while there's two of them standing up. And then they both know that day is their chance to own it. Because if they don't own it, then they never will. And so the conversations myself and John have had are about exactly the same. Let's get it at a level that's going to give you a chance of a couple of people deciding what the car's worth. Because if you've only got one, you only get whatever that one person decides, or whatever level they can own it. So that's the truth of how we've valued it. And it is more difficult with rally cars, but that's what we've gone with. And I think John sort of you know, believed in us that we've done it the right way. With Kevin's car, and we're going to hope to do the same for him tomorrow.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed. I mean, you do have a lot of cars in the auction as well, so I mean that's tantamount to the fact that this must be working, and you must be getting a lot of people now that see the benefits of putting the rally cars in auctions.
Well, I mean we've ended up with 226 cars in this sale over 2 days, and there's everything from a few rally cars in there. We know there's the 6R4 as well, and John's car that, you know, I'm personally interested in. But you know, the fact that we've got and have had the opportunity for people to come and view and touch and feel and see cars has had a bearing. And you know, the great thing is for the buyer and the seller, you know, if it sells at auction, you've got what it's worth on that day. You get exactly every penny of what it's worth. You know, that's where John's believed in us and given us the, you know, the sort of privilege and, you know, to sell this car. And for, as I say, for 3 years I've talked about this car and with John and with the team, and you know, it's yeah, I think I'm hopeful, you know, it's going to be a special day for all concerned, and I think it's lovely that, you know, you guys, hopefully it doesn't go into a museum. Hopefully it does go to people who will use it and bring it to Race Rector and the various things it's gone through down the years. You know, we've had people in the room over the last couple of weeks who know the car, who've talked about it, that they know it's one of the more competitive cars in the historic stages. And you know, as John's alluded to, you know, there can be 3 or 4 escorts in a historic rally, but there's usually only one Sunbeam, and it's this one. So
yes,
Absolutely true. Yeah.
Hopefully it's going to do well. People will want to own it. That's certainly the dream.
I hope so. Well, Russell's not here, unfortunately, to talk to us about the Sunbeam, but we do have some that have been very, very patient. So thank you, our Irish contingency that's on board there. We do have some people that have driven the car. Can I bring? I don't know which era or at which level who drove it first, really. But was it yourself, James, that drove the car earlier than
Owen drove the car, right? James navigated 2013 RAC and the.
Right.
James is multiple Irish tarmac and forest champion, right? And Owen is, I think, three times Irish Forest champion, 3 or 4 times Irish Forest champion. They'll tell you himself.
Yeah,
So you know, we've got champions on both sides of the water, like.
we have indeed. Well,
Yeah.
I'll come to James a bit later, but
Yeah.
Owen, talk to me. Talk to me about the Sunbeam. What was it like to drive? You did a lot in that car, didn't you?
Yeah, it is a fantastic car. It is, I suppose at the start, when John came to us, we were the only ones. It was just an array of S cars we were battling. So John had the idea to take him on in the Sunbeam. So we jumped at it, and from the get go, we were competitive. Like, we were within the top 5 from the get go, and then with a bit of modifying from John and a few modifications, suspension, plane, we were right up the top. We were always in the top 3 from then on. So what you did the championship there, was it the RAC championship, was it? The RAC championship.
Oh, you did the yeah.
Yeah, in 2014, yeah.
Yeah. And how did you get on in that championship?
We were very good. We had we were always we had a few small niggly problems once or twice, and that kind of dropped us down, but we were definitely always battling in the podiums and the car, like his and the thing about John's car is it was period correct, whereas a couple of the other cars we were competing against had full-blown Rager and every under the car, so we always kept the car period correct the way it was back in the 80s. Yeah. And with John's expertise on the Sunbeam and through his company Retro Beam, we were right up on the money all the time, thank God.
So obviously a very competitive car, even at this era.
It is. It is. Like, I've driven an S-Cart there last year now, and the Sunbeam, I can say without say, would definitely outhandle an S-Cart.
That's a great picture there that Jack just put up. That's a brilliant picture.
That was us in the Mid Wales. Yeah, we were, I think, 3rd overall in that event.
Second in that one, didn't it?
Oh, second in that event.
Second overall.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fantastic picture.
There's some footage that came in there last night or this morning from Lannon's Cliff, right? Yeah. Showing the piece on Owen coming up Pikes Peak, and I just told him to put in a couple of escorts before it, right, or maybe after it, right? And just the handling performance and the technical stuff was just out of this world, like, you know.
Yeah,
definitely. You know what I mean? If we had the bump on the straights on the escort that the escort have, right, it wouldn't be anywhere close to the Sunbeam, like, you know. No. But we're working on it. We were
working on it. So John, tell us a little bit if the car sells a bit. It's tomorrow the auction, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's tomorrow. So tell us a little bit if the car sells, what you're going to do with yourself. Are you just going to retire, get some new slippers? And,
no.
Feet up?
Well, at the moment, probably I'll sit back a small bit, right, but not that much, right. Retro Beam is very busy, right, so I'm supplying a lot of stuff into Europe, right, not into the UK, right, or into anything, not much in Ireland, but I'm constantly having pretty hefty orders in from all over Europe, like, you know. But I suppose the euro is strong as well now at the moment, so that helps things, like, you know. So yeah. I'm going to continue with that, right. But the plan is, right, to build probably the car that's going to challenge these escorts and maybe bring Owen back out of retirement, like.
He's too young to be retired.
Owen got married and built a house, so that's why Owen's retired.
So Louise Aiken Walker up there as well, and so Louise obviously drove the car as well. Was that, where was that?
Yeah, that was Louise and Rally Legends the year after. That was the Colin McRae tribute at Rally Legends.
Right.
And Louise came out and drove the car because obviously Louise is a world champion as well, right? So, you know, it was all the world champions were there, right? So
yeah,
Louise came out and drove the car, like, you know, and she put on an amazing performance that weekend, right? And she can. Well, they were the face of Rally Legends for the next year, like, you know.
Right. So some history with that car.
Oh
Really.
yeah,
Isn't there?
it's
There is some
amazing.
history with that car.
You know what I mean? Every event, you know what I mean? The thing about it is, right, that what I can say, you know what I mean, and they always question the reliability of the Sunbeam. And I think Des Odell even alluded to it, right? He said, I don't know where you're coming from, right? But he's had some great reliability with the car, right? And, you know, regardless of what happened to the car in events, right? We always got to the finish, right? We had a massive finish. Like, I think there's a piece now, right, from the last rally that Russell done with Sean and playing there, right? And
So
you know,
who's driving here now? Is this Russell?
That's Russell. That's Russell. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the 2010 Halloween historic stages, right? So yeah. So no, we had some what they call it, you know, niggly problems, right? But as I say, there was one Sunbeam there. And it was always multiplied, right? When it was a Sunbeam, when it was an Escort had an issue, there was another 10 of them take the place, right? So it wasn't missed, right? And that's basically why I think they said that, like, you know what I mean? But other than that, right? I think the car was ultra reliable, like, you know what I mean? I think Owen referred one time, right? The engine is a rock inside it, like, because you know, we always had great power and reliability out of the engine, like, you know, and, you know, we did change a few gearboxes through the 2014 season and we always did it on time. And when he got in, I think we did it on time, was sitting around having a cup of tea before he flew back out, like, you know.
Yeah. It's good. That's good. It's a good car, that. It's a nice car. I mean, Mike,
you love the mirror. Mike Broad will question that, like the mirror. You seen the mirror there in the dash, right? And
yeah.
Mike said, I don't remember that.
And that is definitely not as it was.
It was. It was exactly as it was.
Was I thought it might be for putting Owen's lipstick in or something like that.
No, I showed you. Remember, I showed you the photo of the car on the day, right? And the mirror was there.
Can I ask Owen a question?
Yeah.
When you first got in it, Owen, did you have to move the seat, or are you 5'6"?
Well, yeah. I was sitting in the back seat nearly.
But did you find it a comfortable car?
Oh yeah, we had loads of room inside in it.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
even though I'm 6'2".
Are you? Gosh.
Yeah.
Right.
Mike, one thing, James O'Brien here, when Owen used to get into that car, he would have to get in head first. And the first thing he hit was that mirror. So the mirror got ceremoniously caught and flung into the back. And if there was a back seat, it got caught. So eventually we handed it to John and politely told John what to do with the mirror.
James, I tell you what, it's been worth waiting for 2 hours for that.
No, in fairness to John, when we did get the car, we said to John, you have two choices. We can treat it like the queen it is, or basically, are you willing to take a chance on this thing coming back as a ball? He said, he thought a little bit. I said, there's one reason we're here. We're here to extract the maximum out of it. He said, all right, go for it. And you know, to give John his credit, and to give Owen his credit, basically, if there was an issue with the car, we could hear an issue, we'd back off. But otherwise, the maximum was extracted out of it whenever we could. And it really did go. It really did go. But the most amazing thing was the where the marshals and the spectators, I think it was on the Roger Albert, they pretty much were kissing the ground. The car was, underneath the car. It was to actually see a piece of the history that many of them had grown up with, and they'd come up and they all had their stories, and I remember this and I remember 20 years ago and whatever. It just brought home to us how, what an iconic piece of rallying history it really is. Because as Owen said, the rest of the other cars, fabulous. They were great cars. They sounded lovely with your BDAs and everything else, but they were all replicas. This was the real deal. And there you could just see their eyes popping out. It wasn't the colors. Is it? That's what I was getting. Is it? They wouldn't even give you the full question. Is it?
Yeah.
I said, yep, you're looking at it. And it really was, a huge honor to be in it. And as I said, Owen he wasn't shy when it came to pressing the loud pedal. So it was, we had great fun. And I do know John, I think John lived under that car for 12 months. He lived at home. Every nut and bolt, I think he was intimately acquainted with every piece of that thing. I'm convinced he lived under it.
Brilliant.
Is that right, John? Is that where you were? Permanently under it?
Am I still online? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I just got a thing here saying it muted me, right? So, yeah, no. Especially the events, right? I don't think we got a dry event, right? And most of them were on the Saturday, right? So the plan was to get home as early as we could, right? And obviously with the motor home, right? I just pull up by the workshop and head down for a few hours, right? And Sunday would be definitely 8 hours underneath that car, right, with the power washer, and the rest of it to get all the muck off, And
but that's what you do when you're passionate about your pride and joy.
And then it was a matter of then, right, getting if the next one was 2 weeks later or whatever it was, the car went out. If we had done 3 or 4 rallies with the gearbox was out, and then the next one went in, right, and the big gearbox in was to get stripped down about every 4 rallies, right, and whatever bearings or gears need to be changed, right, because I think we learned that on the first rally in Wales, right. We were only at the end of the first stage and we had a problem with the gearbox, and that was the Mid-Wales stage, not the Mid-Wales stages, the Neat Valley. The Neat Valley stages was never good to us,
Oh.
But I think that was the only event that wasn't in our favour, But the same thing, right? You know what I mean? It was right through the car all the way, and ready for the next event, right? And whatever we discussed with Owen or with James, whatever was discussed at the event, right, about what would improve, right, was improved over that week or a fortnight, right, and to turn up at the next rally, right, and we tell Owen we done nothing, right, but we told Owen we done it, right, and he said, "Oh, brilliant!" And away we go again.
giving all the tricks of the trade away there, John. Anthony, you've been very quiet. You've been very patient, very quiet there. Thank you very much. Anthony and Esther, what's your experiences of the car?
Oh, it's a bit like what James said there. I suppose it was nostalgic. I suppose I'm laughing. Actually, I'm enjoying the evening thoroughly. A couple of things just that Mike Broad said earlier. I will agree with one, absolutely, and I think James and I will probably disagree completely with something else. One was about his rallying career coming to the end at the age of 40. I think James and myself will probably have that. I hear James laughing. I think I could safely say we're probably heading towards 700 events done between the two of us, and we're at the wrong side of 50. And so that was the first thing. The one thing I would have extreme agreement with Mike was that the person on the passenger side being a maniac. That is true. And my wife even says it, and when she says it, it really is true. So I'll have to concur with Mike. That's correct. But to go back and answer your question, yes, it was very nostalgic. We did the Rally of the Lakes in Killarney with the car, and it's the amount of people that were coming up, and exactly like what John Leahy said, is it the real car? That's all they wanted to know. Is it? And like James said, sorry, it was James said it. All they would say is it, and they'd want pictures taken with it. They'd want to sit in it. It was amazing. And I suppose if you think about it in rallying in the current climate, I think, and James does a lot of stuff still on the continent now, there's very, very few cars driven like they should be driven from that era. There's a lot of demonstrations and there's goodwills and all that type of stuff, which is lovely and it's great for the people to see the car. But outside of Owen Murphy, there was probably very few, if anybody, drove them the way they were designed to be driven, not in a showpiece. Like to head up the likes of Moll's Gap and Killarney with an Andrews heat for hire car, and 2,000 or 3,000 people above waiting, and the air hooters and the atmosphere it created. Actually, there's an open invitation to anybody that's listening out there at the moment that has an Andrews car. Owen and I have a bit of unfinished business. We finished third. Wouldn't it be nice to get an Andrews car to win Killarney again? So there's an open invitation. I'd even step down. Maybe Mike Broad could come out of retirement and sit back with Owen for the day. So, and James and I and John Leahy can do the gravel notes. I'm sure we'd come to somewhere end with because I remember Mike saying that, you know, we treat it as a business. So I can assure you we do as well. But one thing, when you're talking about the nostalgia, Tim, or I was talking about the nostalgic element, it really came home when we were in Rally Legends in Italy. And a bit the same, we didn't have a word of Italian. Well, we did. We have nuggets and chips because there was a McDonald's just up from the service area in San Marino. That was the limit of our Italian. But when I have photographs at home, and if I hadn't realized how entertaining this was going to be, I should have brought them. I have photographs of at home where people, Italian fans, were coming in that saw the Sunbeam. And whatever look I gave, here's Owen Murphy autographing the rear tires that came off the car, saying that they were from the Andrews car, and he'd sign it, Owen Andrews Heat for Hire. And they were willing to pay for them. These things weren't fit for, they weren't fit for a silage pit, let alone to pay for them. Even though rumor has it John Leahy took £100 off from later on in the night for each tire, but that was never proven. That was never proven. But it was amazing. They were nearly fighting over it. And what amazed me was that these were very, very young guys. These were guys in their 20s. You would understand if there were guys in their 50s, but they were young people.
If Owen remembers, right, they were there when we played the video.
They were there, yes.
And
there's a picture from Rally Legends, is it?
I had a piece of a video. That's a picture from that's when you were in Rally Legends, yeah. And there was one time there, right, when the guys came to Owen, right, when he came out of the car after coming back. I think it was when after the accident he came back into the Park Ferme. The accident with when they stopped the rally, right? And these
yes.
I think the guys were actually, I think they were from Germany, Owen, were they?
They were, I think, yeah.
Yeah, and they were the guys that actually took the tire, weren't they?
Yeah.
It was amazing, but it showed the interest in the brand and in the car. Had the car not been the genuine and the original article, they probably wouldn't have had any interest in it at all. It was just to be able to take the keepsake home.
But the thing about it is, they had been at the RAC. They were over watching the car. Yes, they were at the RAC. Owen will confirm that.
But if you remember, John, actually, which was very interesting, and this is, I for anybody listening that spectates the rally, switch off your phone now. Their claim to fame was to be able to touch the car as Owen drove past.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Like the likes of that photograph there that you see now, you see these guys, and if they could touch the car at a roundabout or touch it, that's weird enough, because I actually remember that uphill hairpin right. If they could touch the car at a roundabout, they'd come in to tell you, we got to touch it, and go, geez, these guys are mad, like. But no, brilliant times, lovely to have the photographs and so on. So
it was so good that Saturday, right? Like, I mean, I don't think the car would have lasted if it hadn't rained that weekend, right? Because the like of Rally Legends is so technical, right? We struggled with Louise in the dry, right? And you know, I mean, Louise is, you know, she goes flat out.
It's not like you to struggle with a lady.
No,
I thought you'd have lots of practice there.
She put a lot of a lot of effort into the thing, right? And she cut the Lancia Stratus on the spectator stage, and he wouldn't let her pass, right? So she held back, right, to go up into the top end, and she went totally broadsided into the top bend, right? And she was kind of what we say, full of the rack, you know what I mean? And well, they say that in Northern Ireland. I get them to used to say it now. It was full of the rack, right? And what they call it, it's a famous picture. We've seen it for years now, right? It's been the face of rally legends. It comes up in magazines and everything, right? So it's amazing.
I'm smiling here to myself, John, because when you mention a rack in my house, my wife has a different meaning to that completely. But that's a story. I'm sure that's a story for that. That's a story for another day.
For another day, yeah. Anyway, right, so
well, gentlemen, we're going to have to
about
who's in control, yeah. We got to get back in control there, Tim.
Get back in control, yeah. Well, I've been to Ireland many times, and this always ends up about 3 o'clock in the morning, full of Guinness.
You've got the invitation. You've got the invitation for next Easter, right? For the Russell's tribute in New Ross, right?
Yeah.
I'm doing an axle for you, right, for it, right? But it looks like you won't be bringing a Sunbeam now, unless there's somebody else driving it.
Well, we might bring them both. We might just bring them
both.
both. You never know.
Bring them both. Now we're talking.
What car have you, Tim?
A smile on your face.
Huh?
What car has Tim got?
I've got. We have the Astra. We have the Andrews Astra.
Yeah. Would Owen fit in that, would he?
Would fit in that?
Would Owen fit in that? At 6'3" or 4.
Yeah.
Just take off the mirror.
And
take off the mirror.
Very good. Out the 4th pedal. That's the problem. And we also have a replica, an Andrews replica Sunbeam as well, very much like the one that John's probably going to part with tomorrow. So yeah. So if
well, there's quite a few replicas around, right? But there's some good. There's a guy coming from France as well, right? Bernardise, right? He is a lovely. He's a lovely replica Sunbeam that I helped build with him many years ago, right? I supplied a lot of stuff to him when he built it, like, you know. And he's very successful in French historic rallies, you know.
So yeah, we'll look forward to that. We'll look forward to that, and at Easter we will. Yeah, absolutely. I'd just like to thank
let's hope KKV comes as well, right? You know what I mean? Whoever,
well,
if somebody buys it tomorrow, but if they don't, right? You know what I mean? I'll be going cap in hand to get it back home.
That's brilliant. Gary, just back to you briefly, please, if we can. Just unmute yourself, Gary, for me.
Back with you now.
There we go. That's it. Yeah. So one question I do want to ask, really, if I wanted to get into owning a piece of history. And this is irrelevant of the Andrews cars. I mean, I think the Andrews cars are a great piece of history. I think they're a great collection in themselves, to be honest with you. There's the likes of Colin McRae cars and other that sort of thing as well, of that sort of caliber. But if somebody was looking for a piece of history, how would you recommend they sort of start to look for that? Because not everybody wants to pay top dollar for things. You know, where would you recommend down to the sort of the more clubman's level of people? How would you know?
I'm going to confess here, Tim, that I'm probably not the ideal person to talk to about that sort of thing. The reality is that, you know, I know that, you know, the owner of our business, Nick Whale, does his rallying, and he does it with various friends of his, and you know, you guys are the guys that are in rallying, and you guys all know each other. There are no doubt going to be opportunities of cars that come up between you guys that someone could start with, and I would expect it would be a matter that, you know, there's word of mouth and conversations, and actually I know someone who's got something that'll get you going and get you started. You know, I've got a friend who has funnily enough an old Sunbeam that he still loves, and he takes it around the Forest of Dean and does a couple of little stages and sort of club rallying that he loves doing. And his car isn't anything like the value of John's, but it's much more affordable for people of a different sort of area. But he's had that for a number of years, and if he ever wanted to sell it, I know without doubt he'd have 10 people ready to put their hands out. So I'm sure that can happen. You know, John's car is a special car, and I think that's why it's likely going to auction, and we'll achieve, hopefully for them tomorrow, very well. One never knows. People don't tend to show their hands. That's why it's an auction. They're not going to tell us well in advance that I'm going to pay X amount of pounds for it. So we'll find out tomorrow what it's worth and whether there's a desire for it.
So got to ask you, Gary. Got to ask you about if somebody picks up on this tonight and wants to register to bid tomorrow, are they still able to, and how do they do it?
The easiest way, Michael, to show you this, I'm going to just bear with me. I'm going to share screen. Now, I'm not so. I don't think I can actually. I was going to say if it's is it Kevin or Tim that's been going in through our website.
Jack.
Is it Jack? Sorry, Jack.
Hey, you should be able to share now, Gary. I've just allowed
I can share now. Okay, lovely. Let me do this. I'm going to go to here. And essentially through our homepage, you can register to bid just literally with a few clicks. At this stage, it's probably a bit late for online bidding because registration and getting everything authorised will be cutting it fine. We start at 11 a.m. tomorrow morning, but if they ring us and get registered, if they upload IDs this evening, which is as easy as 2 forms of ID via this stage here, they get those registered and then call us in the morning. We'll get everybody and anybody who's interested registered to bid on the car. We've got a bunch of guys lined up. We have 10 to 12 people ready to man the phones, and they can man at least 2 phones each. So, we rarely miss anybody. If somebody wants to register to bid tonight, straight tomorrow morning, we'll get them sorted.
And what time? You said it's about 11 o'clock. The auction starts at 11 o'clock.
Yes.
And it is over 2 days, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So the cars with 3 and 4 on their bidding numbers are going through on Friday. So the easiest way to show it is, I'm just going to skip over here. Yes. It's going on Friday. I need to just click over here. And we would expect to probably sell somewhere between 15 and 20 cars, maybe as many as 25 cars per hour.
Right.
This car being lot 3, John will tell me, is it 369, John? Rings a bell.
393.
Wait 1 moment, I'll bring it up now. I had it on here earlier. He's absolutely right, 393. So we'd sort of think that car is probably going to be somewhere around about 5 hours in, so about 4 o'clock. It could be as early as 3:30. It could be as late as sort of 5:30. We just don't know how the rest of the sale is going to go before it. If it goes something like the Peugeot that we did in May, that took 22 minutes on its own. you can never tell. We didn't get 20 in an hour.
Yeah, fair credit to you there. You didn't have to put some effort into that one. Absolutely.
So what it does, it starts at 11 and then it continues until the lots for that day is over, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. All the 3s and 4s will be offered tomorrow.
And people can watch, so apart from that, people can watch live again like we did last time?
Through the website, click on and they can watch the whole sale live online.
That's brilliant. Well, good luck with the auction tomorrow. I hope you stood on the end of that phone just like you were with the Peugeot.
If it goes anywhere near as well as that, I'll probably be as emotional as John about it, because I know how much he's invested in it, emotionally, to bring it over to us. So I really am hopeful for him tomorrow.
Thanks very much, Gary. Appreciate that.
Thanks for having me on,
well. I appreciate
Thanks for listening to you all.
Thank you very much to my Irish contingency. Been great.
I'd like to say thanks as well, right, to all the lads for giving us the time there this evening, right, to Owen for his great, rallies in the car, right. It was really appreciated, right, and as I said, it was always in a safe pair of hands when it was with Owen, right, and I think he got everything that was in it out of it, like, you know what I mean, so, and some good results as well, so that's what it's all about.
That's what it needs. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Thank you to Mike Broad. I mean, what a legend.
Legend, yeah.
Brilliant.
Absolute legend. Thank you, Mike. It's been a pleasure.
Probably asleep now. Is he still asleep?
No, no.
No.
I tell you what, I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and to James and Owen and all the Irish contingent, it's a joy, and I hope to see you soon.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. West, thank you very much for your technical side of it, and Jason for keeping me switched on in the background. Literally, when nobody could see me on the screen, and I had to put 50 pence in the meter to put the lights back on. And most of all, and of course, to Jack and to Mark, who's been in the background making everything work and tweaking things and unmuting people and doing the best to put videos and things up. And lastly, but certainly not least last, but Robert Brooks. I mean, amazing! What a great chap. I've had the opportunity to meet him a couple of times, and he's a superstar. He's had to duck out early, but he does send his apologies and his thanks for everybody that's come on tonight. He's thoroughly enjoyed it as well. So I hope we've done Russell proud. I hope we've followed up on Race Retro as much as we can. I'm sure there'll be still lots and lots of tributes of Russell Brooks for many, many, many years. He was a legend, and I'm sure he'll continue to be. So thank you very much for everybody.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you very much.
Good night now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you everybody watching, and hopefully we'll see you all very soon.
Okay, mate. Thank you very much.
All the best.
Bye.